Did you know that world's first human brain computer chip is now built and ready? Or that there are contact lenses that grant your eyes the ability to zoom into things? Or that real-life invisibility cloaks actually exist? Welcome to 17 of the wildest inventions, from fierce to fantastical to straight up untamed. So, just to start with, what is the wildest place on the entire planet Earth? The jungle, right? Well, thanks to bubble hotels, you can now be completely enveloped in these environments, but at the same time retain all the comforts of a normal hotel. I'm not talking these kind of bubbles. Bubble hotels are made from a high-tech, ultra-thin plastic fabric, which has been pre-tensioned or stretched in such a way that it almost looks like glass. There's no creases, it has really high transparency, and the key benefit is that unlike glass, which usually requires frames or some sort of structure around it, there are no seams here. The bubbles are completely sealed off from the outside world. So it doesn't matter if it's 60 or minus 60 degrees Celsius outside, you wouldn't even notice. I'll give this an easy 3 out of 10 on the WILO-O-METER. Pretty crazy, but for perspective, number 1 is a 10 out of 10. Oh yeah, and thanks to Rhino Shield for sponsoring this video. But let's say that you wanted to leave your bubble. If you're out there exploring your tropical rainforest, you're also going to want something to protect you from the rain. Stop. Enter Keisha, what's claiming to be the world's smartest umbrella. The company's pitch is that, well, the average person loses 4.6 umbrellas in their lifetime. So let's make one umbrella to just end them all. It's made of fiberglass to withstand winds of up to 140 kilometers per hour. It expands all the way out into a 120 centimeter canopy, which is enough room for not just one person, but two. And most importantly, it's a smart umbrella. It can be located on a map if you accidentally leave it behind, and it even has a feature that can ping you to make sure you keep it with you when it thinks there's a good chance of rain. I'm giving that a 4 out of 10. Now, as for what you'd wear while adventuring, Samsung might just have the answer. They've patented a smart shirt that can effectively harvest the static electricity generated by the rubbing of your fabric as you move around. The same type of electricity that lets you rub two balloons against your shirt, hold them against each other, and watch them repel each other. Like that. Science. And this clothing can then utilize that gathered energy to power the shirt's smart features, which are all enabled by the sensors integrated inside of it. So, as an example, just by walking, you might well be able to power your shirt to self-regulate your temperature. It could heat you up if you're cold, cool you down if you're hot. Your clothes could use this power to gather information about your activity levels, or even just convert this power to charge and then use it to juice up your smartphone. But let's say you'd rather take in the rainforest from the comfort of your own home. Well, that's what Google's here for. Since the day they started Google Maps in 2005, this company has been on a mission to map out the world. It might seem like a simple objective, but the challenge comes when you factor in that this world also includes scorching volcanoes, cavernous abysses, and completely uncharted rainforests. People have barely seen them, let alone mapped them. So, Google built the Trekker. What kind of looks like a backpack for giants, but what is actually an incredibly intricate system, combining 15 ultra-high resolution cameras firing in every single direction, taking photos every 2 seconds. It has a modem to be able to communicate the exact location where each shot was taken, tons of storage space, a dedicated cooling system to keep the cameras running, and of course the batteries required to power the whole thing. And these Trekkers, they're the reason that Google has been able to capture some of the most remote parts of the world. They've been planted on boats, cars, they've even put them on zip lines to fly through the Amazon rainforest and map it from the inside out. Plus, in 2018, Google released an upgraded version, which is both more compact and more capable. Alright. Back to the real jungle, specifically the Guatemalan jungle, which is so densely packed with trees that for the longest time all we've been able to see apart from them is just a couple of ancient Mayan temples poking through. But that's where LIDAR comes in. Now, there's a good chance that you've heard of LIDAR. The latest iPhones actually have LIDAR sensors built into them, and what they do is fire out bursts of light rapidly, time how long that light takes to return, and then use that time to calculate the distance that any object is away from you. What's that got to do with the jungle? Well, archaeologists have managed to use the distance measuring capability of LIDAR to effectively see through the canopy of trees, and by doing so have just realized, wait a second, those were not just one-off temples poking out. All those little hills and bumps and rocky imperfections that in person might have just looked like random natural features, by seeing the whole landscape as one through LIDAR revealed that this was in fact a sprawling city, with over 60,000 houses, palaces and highways. This one finding has changed our entire perception of the scale of Mayan civilization. 4 out of 10. And if you're enjoying this whole theme, by the way, we spent a full day putting it together, so a sub to the channel would be lush. Now, putting the jungles aside for a second, we need to talk about the other Amazon in our lives. Yeah, that one. See, Amazon's smart product line started out with Echo, a speaker powered by their Alexa virtual assistant. Simple. But then they thought, okay, let's make it more visual. So they created the Echo Show lineup, which had displays that could display information and cameras that could record information. And then these cameras started moving, as Amazon built in tech to be able to identify your face and track it across the room. But their latest machine, Astro, feels like a bit of a tipping point. This is starting to feel less like a virtual assistant, more like an actual assistant. They've taken their increasingly capable system that can track your face and mounted it on wheels that can take it at a meter per second. They've given it the ability to fire out thousands of tiny little dots across your entire room, and then use those dots to be able to understand where it is. They've given it a cup holder, for goodness sake, to be able to bring drinks to you. Tell me that's not the dream. Can you imagine if Amazon made a monkey robot? We could call it Primate. Now to Africa, where in Kruger National Park, there's been a poaching problem. See, white rhinos are incredibly valuable. Their horns are used a lot in Asian countries to make healing tonics and forms of medicine, so much so that one rhino horn can regularly go for as much as $300,000. So you can see why it's a problem. These rhinos are roaming completely in the wild, and so are for the most part unprotected, and they're predominantly situated in poor countries, where the temptation to make a quick buck is probably going to be pretty high. However, researchers in the UK have actually figured out that these rhinos respond actively to certain frequencies of sound. And so what they've done is 3D printed drones that are equipped with both visual and thermal sensors that can pick up humans, and then sirens that can blast out those sounds to effectively keep rhinos away from those people, who more than likely are there for nefarious purposes. It's always nice to see technology being used for good. 5 out of 10. And this is just the start of what drones can do. Because another huge issue that crops up in dry, wooded areas is fires. And when fires start in these areas, they're extremely tough to stop. Try to visualize how much space 1 acre of land is. About 4,000 square meters of plants, trees, animals. And now, try to digest the fact that in the United States alone, wildfires destroy 8 million acres of land per year. However, 2 engineering students in 2015 realized that by firing a vortex of a certain frequency of sound at fires, they could displace the oxygen molecules that fires need to keep burning, thus putting out the fires. And since then, they've partnered up with a company called ARSAC to start working this technology into drones. Drones which can hover above the fires and fire these vortexes downwards into them, all but eliminating the need for humans and our hoses of water. The tech is not quite final and in action yet, but it's looking pretty fierce. Okay, this is where we go to the next level. You've heard of night vision goggles, right? They're built to ignore visible light and instead focus on picking up infrared light, which hot objects, including human bodies, will naturally give off. And so it doesn't matter if you're sitting in the dark, you can still see them. The slight issue though, is that in order to capture this infrared light in a high enough resolution, these headsets end up incredibly bulky and incredibly expensive. There's another way though, and it's very sneaky. Scientists in Australia have discovered what they're calling a magical nanomaterial. Gallium arsenide. What is it with this video and arses? And this compound can actually change the wavelength of infrared light to convert it to visible light. So instead of needing a bulky infrared sensor, by just applying a simple coating of this onto normal glasses, which, because this is a nanomaterial, would be like 500 times thinner than a human hair, you'd no longer need those infrared sensors. By the time the infrared light has reached your eyes, it's already been converted to a form that they understand. 6 out of 10. And also on the note of eyesight, scientists are currently working on creating contact lenses which will give you a real-life superpower. Contacts which are in part just standard contacts that allow you to see through them normally. But then they also have a section that's telescopic that allows for a magnified view. They're designing them such that at a moment's notice, if you wink with your right eye, then these contacts will be able to detect that wink and use it as a signal to then re-guide the light such that you'll switch from seeing things through the normal section to seeing things through the magnified section. It's one thing to be able to hit the 3x zoom button on your smartphone. Imagine being able to do that with your eyes. Okay, let's dial it back a notch for a minute. The invention that I'm about to show you might sound tame, maybe even funny, but I'm telling you, this could change the world. I'm talking about clothing made out of milk. My grass. Milo! The concept has come about from a German fashion designer who realized that milk contains casein proteins, that if you pour acid into milk you can obtain those proteins, and that by then spinning those proteins through what is effectively a massive cotton candy machine, you can turn them into fabric. And the best part of it is, you can use milk that's already out of date and would otherwise just be thrown away. And producing clothes through this method uses 15 times less water than traditional fabrics. Now, when I say the word printer, you probably think of something like this. But over the last few years especially, the entire definition of a printer is starting to evolve. Enter the Delta Wasp 3MT lineup, a set of printers capable of printing buildings. And aside from the fact that that's just awesome, and the fact that it would save massively on manual labor costs, there's an even more significant perk to this, that your creativity becomes the only limit. All of a sudden, we can leave behind the limitations of 4 flat brick walls around us and a flat ceiling above us, and we can print literally anything that pops into our minds with machine-like precision. For example, the spherical houses in Italy. I think they look great. And guess what? They took just 8 days to print, and they're not made of bricks or cement or glass, just raw, biodegradable earth. I think that's worthy of a 7 out of 10. Now, given the whole theme of this video, I can't not mention how much of an issue deforestation is around the world. That's why we had that Team Trees campaign a few years ago to try and replant 20 million of them. And that's great, but several companies are now working on what's kind of looking like the next era of combating the tree problem. A way that you can have wood whilst not actually needing to cut any trees down. Enter lab-grown wood, for which, instead of planting seeds and then waiting 20 years for them to grow, is made by starting with live cells taken from an existing tree, and then placing those cells into various cultures that contain hormones for accelerated growth. This tech is still in pretty early phases, but imagine if you could then place that growing wood into a mold, such that it grows into the exact shape that a company needs it in. It would not just save trees and therefore the planet, but also save the company so many steps of having to process the wood. But you can level this concept up further with lab-grown meat. It's feeling particularly wild today. Bad hair day? And this is made through a very similar process to the wood. A small number of muscle cells are removed harmlessly from an animal and placed into a medium which allows them to carry on replicating outside of that animal into whatever shape you want. But there's 2 reasons that this is an even more important invention. One, the fact that these are living animals with the ability to feel pain. And so being able to save their lives while still being able to eat meat is a monumental win. But also 2, because you're actually going to be eating the end product from this process, you will also benefit from the fact that in a lab setting, you can basically just adjust the parameters of how you grow this meat to completely change the nutritional profile to whatever it is that you want. And that, my friends, is a proposition that's tough to ignore. 8 out of 10. Alright, now for the top 3. And this one is actually nothing to do with the betterment of the planet, this is just one of the coolest things I have ever seen. Thanks to the Canadian camouflage company Hyperstealth Technology, just like the chameleons of the rainforest, we are looking at the possibility of having a very real invisibility cloak. This company has developed a material that they're calling quantum stealth, which is effectively a corrugated sheet, but one in which each ridge is made up of a convex lens. And the way that these convex lenses reflect the light allows for certain dead spots, areas for which, if you were standing behind them, your image would be scattered such that even if someone was looking at you dead on, they might not even know. Even your shadow would be hidden. It's currently being pitched mostly for military applications, to be used to hide troops, tanks, and even aircraft right in front of the enemy, but it's so inexpensive that it's also being used by magicians. 8 out of 10. Let's hope they don't start making pants out of it. Let me ask you a question. What do you think has been the biggest killer of humanity over the course of our history? Cancer? World War II? The plague? The answer actually appears to be malaria. It may not feel like it if you're from a modern Western country, but malaria, contracted from the bites of female mosquitoes, is considered by many to be the single deadliest disease of all time. Some sources even say that malaria has killed, you're gonna want to get a seat for this one, half of the human beings who have ever existed. And so, of course, humans have tried everything to keep them at bay. Mosquito repellents, mosquito killing sprays, giant mosquito zapping machines. None of them have managed to solve the problem. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, as scientists have figured out that by taking a few of the male mosquitoes within a malaria-spreading population out and genetically engineering them, they can make those populations implode from the inside. What they're doing is adding a sequence to the male's DNA, which doesn't affect that mosquito in itself, but just makes any female offspring that they have from then on have slightly deformed mouths, which prevents them from being able to bite people. The reason they're genetically modifying the males is because each male breeds with many females, and so by targeting even just a few of them, they can very quickly change the course of the entire next generation of the population. 8 out of 10 for the incredible innovation, but it does raise an obvious ethical question. Like, even though these mosquitoes may have resulted in 800 times the number of deaths of World War II, is it a good idea for us to play God with delicate ecosystems? What do you think? And just before invention number 1, do remember that I have 4 other episodes in this invention series. I will leave them linked in a pinned comment. Okay, this one is absolutely bananas. So, there's a good chance that you've seen at least one sci-fi movie all about how humans in the future are going to be walking around with chips inside their brains. And of course, Elon Musk is trying to make this a reality. You might know he's created a company called NEURALINK, which has the long-term goal of integrating humans with artificial intelligence. And they just recently had one of their first major breakthroughs. So they started out by letting a monkey directly control a video game with a joystick. And as it did, the monkey learned that by tapping the orange dots, he would be rewarded with a tasty banana smoothie. And so he kept doing it. Now, before this was recorded, Neuralink had planted an implant into this monkey's brain and were using it to monitor his brain activity, to see what was going on in his brain every time he was deciding where to move the joystick. And with this information, after letting him play with the joystick for a few minutes to understand what brain signal corresponded to what movement, something incredible happened. Neuralink unplugged his joystick and the monkey carried on playing. Even though the joystick was no longer connected, he was moving the cursor just by thinking about moving the cursor. His brain signals were being picked up by his implant and sent to the game console as an input through the Neuralink app. And it's one thing to see this in a monkey, but the craziest part is that Elon Musk is saying 2022 is the year where these chips will start being placed inside humans too. So, at the very least, it's gonna be an interesting year. 10 out of 10. Now, do you want to know what else is completely wild? The durability of this phone case. Is the floor okay? This is the Rhino Shield Clear case, which uses the newest version of the company's shock spread material that can distribute impact to save your phone from even the worst of drops. It's hard to watch, isn't it? They finally solved the issue with clear cases, of them turning yellow after being exposed to natural UV light. And at the same time, it's also their most customizable case yet. You can pick from an almost limitless number of collaborations from Marvel to Star Wars, and even if you don't find something that you like, you can just make your own. Pick your own color, your own print, your own buttons, even your own camera ring. It's like a pick and mix for smartphones. And for the extra clumsy among you, aka me, you can also choose from 6 different detachable lanyards to stop you even dropping your phone in the first place. So check the link in the description and use the code MrClear for 20% off within the first week of this video going live. To check out my whole playlist of invention videos, click here. Or to find out why AirTags are becoming a problem, that video's here. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss. I'll catch you in the next one.